Okay, this is Ellie Hollenbeck here today. Um, Ellie, how you doing?
I'm doing really good for 83, I think.
Yeah. Wow. Um, so Ellie, tell us about your career and everything that brought you to where you are today.
Well, I started with computers in 1960.
Wow.
And yeah, I was going to college at the University of Minnesota and I needed a nighttime job. And I found this key punch operator at Gold Bond Stamp Company. And so I was a key punch operator there for a couple of years.
You beat me by 17 years.
I know you were a baby when I first met you, 18 or something, I think.
Yeah. So then what'd you do after that?
Okay, so then I actually moved to Seattle, and some friends of mine moved here, so I decided to move here too. And I worked downtown at Learners. I was their accountant for about 9 months, and I had already met this fella, and so I got married. And then we moved to San Francisco, where I went to work for American Homes. And the reason why is they were doing card punch there, and I had that experience. So they hired me. And there we went from card punch to paper tape, which that was weird,
Been there,
and
done
then
that.
magnetic tape.
Wow.
And then they went on a Wang. And so that's how I got the Wang experience.
The Wang mini computer. Yeah.
Wang computer, yeah, that was probably 68, maybe even earlier.
Wow.
Um, and then we moved to Portland, and our neighbor was had an interest in Tom software. And he said, I've never had a housewife be an installer, but would you like to try installing computers? And I said, yes.
What year was that?
I think that was 78, I'm going to say.
Yep.
And I'm saying that because my daughters were, I think, in second grade, and I was able to leave home because I was single parent by that time. And that was my start with Tom Software.
Nice.
So they closed that office in 81, I believe. And I remember that because that was when the Mountain Blue,
Yeah.
Mount
Yeah.
St.
I know.
Helens. And so I moved up here and went to the regular offices. And that was cool. There was you and Jim Jim, I can't remember his last name.
Jim Odlin,
Jim Odlin. Oh yeah.
David Kotleb.
Yeah. Oh, Dave Kotler. Yes.
The master programmer.
There was a whole bunch of people there that I kind of we had a get together not too long ago, but they weren't all there, so it was kind of hard. But we had lots of different people go through there, and that was really cool. I wasn't really involved in the main company because I was on the road so much that
Installing, training.
yeah, installing and training. Yep.
And was that with the home building product or with other parts of Tom?
Yeah, I did the restaurant system. I did not for profit. Actually, the not for profit was down in Portland. Um, gosh, what all systems did we have? We had a whole bunch.
Yeah, I think there was manufacturing and there was also like logistics for importers that import stuff in and then they distribute it out, companies like
Yeah,
that.
that's where I worked with the New Zealand guys. Yeah, because I wanted to go to New Zealand, but I never got to go. So yeah, that was I think where they started with the international stuff. Um, but I didn't get too involved in that either. But
God, I
well,
didn't
I
know.
did.
I'm not sure I even knew about international. Can you tell me a little about that?
Um, I can't remember who he was teamed up. This was Howard.
Howard Bing,
Yeah, he was teamed up with some international software distributor. But
for our
again,
viewers, Howard Bing was the CEO of Tom Software back in these days.
correct, correct. And then shortly after that, I went with Fast. So kind of lost. all the Tom stuff and was kind of focused on home building.
And when you say you went with fast, can you describe what that means?
Well, I left Tom. And I don't even remember what the interchange was, except that I had more home building experience than anything else. And I think it was Ron Sunny that said I should do that. I don't even remember all of that, but I think it was Ron Sunny that brought me into to
Yeah, killer
fast.
programmer. Ron Sunny was one of the best.
He was. I saw him at the Puyallup Fair a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Short, that was a sidelight, of course.
Yeah.
And of course I loved the home builder. That was cool. Did that for 20 years. Yeah, about 20 years.
And so when you went, you actually left Tom, you weren't an employee anymore. And so
Correct.
who were you working for then?
Fast.
Me. Okay.
Well, no, I think it was called Cosby
Cosby Johnson.
Johnson.
Johnson
Johnson
Cosby.
Cosby.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I forgot that. Yeah.
Mike Johnson and me started that company.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I forgot that. Um, Again, I was never in the office, rarely in the office. There was a gal that did programming there.
Well, not you're not talking about Joe, right?
No, Joe, my favorite. No.
Yeah.
Um, I don't remember that lady at all. Um, but she was a pretty good programmer because I used to ask for changes before I went out because people would want a different thing in general ledger or an additional deduction in payroll or because we customized a lot and she was pretty good at fixing those things, but I don't remember who that was.
Yeah, I don't remember that either.
Yeah,
Amazing.
she worked with Ron a lot because I think most of you were gone or out in the road or I don't even know, but it was like Ron and I and the salesperson and this programmer. Seemed like we were the ones in the office most of the time.
Yeah, I
I
know.
don't
I
know
was
where is that when you started Leverance, maybe?
no. Leverance was in the year 2000.
Oh wow, yeah.
So what
Yeah,
year are you talking?
you were doing that for about 7 years when I was because I think I retired in 2007 or 2008. Can't remember exact.
Yeah, okay.
So a lot has happened since then because
Yeah.
that was right about when Constellation took over the systems.
Yeah, so in late 90s and 2000s, so you were working at Fast at that time,
Correct.
traveling to all these builders.
Yep.
What do you think about some of the builders? You remember some of the specific builders and what they were doing?
Oh boy. Everybody kind of had a different take on how they were going to run their companies. And I remember one in Vancouver, Washington. That this was kind of a interesting. It was later in the installations, but he didn't even know if he made money or not. And so we had installed the software and the accountant wouldn't give me access to her general ledger or payroll or anything. One
Wow.
day he called me and he said, "Come in." She left. Can you redo the whole system? So I punched in all their numbers for him. And at the very last, I was just running the application that told them how much money they made. And he was standing behind me and it came up and said $2 million. And I thought he was going to faint. That was, he was amazed. And I don't remember his name either. That's terrible. I don't remember these
Yeah, it's
builders.
hard to remember all those people.
I was always going to make a big list of them, but I never did that.
So 2 million. I was worried you might be about to talk about some sort of embezzlement story there.
No, he was amazed. He went off to Italy and took a little trip. I think he was happy about that.
That's neat.
There was a lot of those stories though back in those days because everything was kind of kept on paper. They had
Yeah.
a sheet of paper that had assets and liabilities, and that was about it. And in introducing some of that new to those companies was interesting because they'd have accounts payable, but they didn't hardly even call it that. They just said, we've got invoices we got to pay. And so you would introduce accounts payable and entering all this information. And it was a challenge many, many times.
Yeah, in 1975, I was a computer programmer and I went to a company that they wanted me to do some work for this company. So I go into this room and there's a bunch of ladies, they're accountants, and I say, "Well, what do you want me to do?" And she goes, "We want you to modify our AP system." So I said, "Okay, what do the letters AP stand for?" She says, "Accounts payable." I said, "Well, what does that mean? What does that do?" And all and
Oh, wow.
that's how I learned accounting.
Oh, dear.
I learned it by just saying, "What do you want me to do?" And then they would say, all she wanted was a little field added to the screen. And oh, okay, I did that in like an hour.
Well, I liked you as a president, and this is why I could take things to you, the problems that I had, and I could take them to you and just print them, just present them wide open, like this company needs a payroll piece that does additional deductions or something, and they have to be based on this home that they're working on or something. I made that up, of course, but I could tell that to you, and we could come up with some kind of ideas so they could program that stuff. And as far as I know, we answered all their questions. I don't remember anybody, not unhappy with us. So I don't know.
Yeah, it was pretty neat time there. So, can you remember any other clients that you worked with that are memorable?
Oh wow, there's a lot. Yeah, the one in red, red something in New Jersey. Wow. Uh,
Now, when you say red, I kind of remember that myself a little bit.
yeah, I just don't remember the full name of it. It was near Tom's River. I remember that because that's where I would go to cut over to their place. They were kind of Muslim group and very set in their ways. They wanted it this way, and that was the only way they wanted it. Um, and we were starting to team up with another group, but I don't remember the name of them. And so we were kind of all working together trying to get them up and running. And we finally did. And I should come up with the name, but they're a really big builder still, I think, in the New
Wow.
Jersey area, New York, New Jersey.
And did they get up and running and get going good?
They did, yeah. The only problem was if I couldn't work on a weekend there, because their weekends were you hands off. You couldn't do anything. So
Oh,
I got to go a lot of places. I went to DC, I went to baseball games in Baltimore.
yeah, that was the
Oh
trouble.
gosh.
Everybody's traveling, and there were no Zoom meetings or WebEx meetings. Uh, you had to
Oh,
go.
and at first I didn't even have cell phones. I mean,
Right.
and I carried the computers. Me, I'm 4 foot 7.5. I carried the computers with me, or the big discs. Remember those big discs?
Yeah, yeah, they were like this big around.
10 megabytes or something like
Yeah, yeah,
that.
they were like, well, you had 5 megabyte removable, and then the fixed part of the whole thing was another 5 megabytes. So you could take the removable out, and I would take it on the road to do demos. And every city had a Wang computer office in downtown, and the builder would come downtown, and then I would show up with my disk and plug it in and do the demo. And it was always in a really nice Wang office, with great accoutrements and everything. And they were our partner, and we actually sold the hardware and the software and wrote it all up on a contract. And We were a reseller and did all that.
Sometimes our learning curve was, I remember I had a builder in, couldn't have been too far away. So I'm going to say maybe Tacoma. I don't remember. And so I was taking a disc down there to overwrite their system, and I said, they had a IT person, brand new guy, young man, and I said, okay, make a backup because I'm coming down to wipe it out, and you'll need a backup to do it. And he said, I got down there. He said he made a backup. I overlaid all the stuff, and I came back to the office. I get a call. Where's all our data? You said you backed it up. Oh well, okay. I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Oh, so they were able to redo it, but from that time on, I did not let them back it up. I did my own backup.
I'll tell you an even worse story than that. I had a client that they had a the hard disk crashed and they didn't
Yeah.
know it crashed. So they called the Wang service person out there, and the Wang service person puts the disk in and it won't work, takes it out. They said, "Do you have another one?" We have this one, so puts that one in, doesn't work. So then he says, "Do you have another one?" And the lady goes, "Well, I have all my backups in the car," which were four separate discs, those removable. So they brought that in. He put each one of those in. This one doesn't work. This one doesn't work. This one doesn't work. And what was happening was the head crash was ruining each of those discs as he put them into test. So at the end, they lost all their data completely. And I didn't know about it until after it was all over. It
Yeah,
was like,
I believe it. But they were all new to. We were all just learn. Well, people are still learning, by the way.
yeah.
So yeah, I've got an AI experience though. I run a book club, and I looked online. There were no questions for the book that we had, so I just kind of made up a few from what I knew. And my daughter, who works for the Department of Health, said, I use AI. You want me to run those through AI? And I went, sure. Oh my gosh, the questions that came out looked like I was a genius. So there's a lot of new stuff. I can't use it, but I love it.
Yeah, I use it all the time. It's funny. Some people are saying AI makes you dumber. I think it makes you smarter because you can ask any question you want and then get educated.
Well, and this thing combined the book that we were reading with my data and with what I gave it,
Right.
and unbelievable.
All
So
the context is there.
yeah, yeah, it's amazing. I don't know what home builders do now, but that
Well,
I
it's interesting. I mean, there's a lot of challenge out there to figure out what to do with AI and how to make it work in the office. And um, I think when home building, there's a lot of physical work that just has to be done out in the field.
yeah.
And of course, they sub all that out, but then you got to manage those subs. And um, I'm not sure if AI is going to affect home building like it will other industries where it may cut back staff quite a lot.
And I thought of something again back to the old days. Um, I saw that with a new law that's coming out that overtime won't be taxed.
Hmm.
So I thought everybody who writes payroll now is got to go in and be able to separate overtime from other ones for the just the US tax. So they've got a new challenge. Remember 2000 when it was turning 2000
Yeah,
and everybody thought,
Y2K, or it's called Y2K, right?
yeah, yeah, they, it was going to crash. Everything was going to crash, and
And all these
programmers.
programmers that have retired had to be brought back in.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, any of these old systems, they need the older programmers to come and look at it.
Well, when I was first designing fast, I put in there the ability to handle that
Yep.
right from the beginning, and because it was right around the corner, somewhat. I mean, we started writing it in 1984, so it wasn't right around the corner, but it eventually came. Everybody had to deal with it.
Yep. There wasn't, as far as I know, we didn't have any problems at all with it.
Yeah,
I
just
can't remember any anyway. So I liked working with builders a lot. They were a real challenge because they are very definite people. They know what they want. And with the fact that we were able to keep up with them and do some of their custom work was really a challenge, but it was fun too. It was
yeah.
fun too.
And we
It'd be
always made
boring if you,
yeah, we always made those custom changes available to any other builder who would want them.
sure,
And
sure.
some people did. A lot of things got added that way that everybody liked.
Oh yeah, yeah. Like some of the inventory control stuff. That was kind of nice. Not all builders needed it, but eventually they started seeing that they did probably need it, and some implemented it, but on a small scale.
How many times did you see builders using inventory?
I would say a third of them used it.
And what did they have like a building, separate building, or did they just use the garage for the house to store stuff, or how did you see it working?
Well, sometimes they had several storage places. It depends, like if they worked in different cities, they would have different storage areas, so they'd need two systems keeping them separate, you know. But I'm trying to think who that was. It seems like it was somebody in Alabama that had multiple. They had storage, and I think they had a lot of cement bricks and stuff that they used, and yeah, I don't remember why they had it, but they had a warehouse in almost every city they were working in.
So what do you do? What's your experience with getting builders to implement the scheduling?
Oh yeah, that was not easy. So much of their scheduling was based on, is it going to rain? Is there a storm coming? So you would make the schedule and then it'd have to be changed, and they had to notify people, and it was difficult to get them to use it. I don't know how many were successful with it, to be honest.
Do you recall the um, confirmation report and how it was faxed out to the subs?
Oh, I don't remember that.
That was
I
interesting
remember
because
the confirmation report, but I don't remember how it worked.
the idea was that we would produce it every day and they would print it out and it would have a separate page for each vendor. And then they would fax that to each vendor. So somebody had to just fax it every morning. And it would be mainly for tomorrow, for the day after, or maybe today and the day after. And you could have it for 2 days, 2 day window or a 3 day window to look ahead. And then there were lead times, like let's say a cabinet manufacturer, you might want to give them a 6 week notification so they can start making the cabinets, and then maybe a 1 week notification to get ready to deliver and install. And then we always like to have a night before notification. So everybody gets a night before, just a final reminder, be on the job site tomorrow. Now,
I
Esther,
remember I, I remember them doing that. I think that somebody else did the training on that one. But when I would come in to work with them, they would be doing these faxes. I remember them doing it. I didn't do the installation though of that.
well, there wasn't too many that would do it, but what about obviously the core piece is the purchase orders. What's your memory on how that process went of getting builders to do purchase orders from
They
stand?
loved it.
Yeah.
Purchase orders was probably their favorite thing, actually. It kind of cemented their budgets. Um, yeah, they were very willing to learn the purchase order side of it. And many times the owner himself would come in and want to know how the purchase order system was going to work. So I spent a lot of time with owners on that. And that was interesting. They would even ask me, I need a salesperson for out there. You know these guys? Who would you hire? Okay.
That's a subtle way of trying to get you to, give up one of the other people and then they would steal the employee. Yeah,
But
well,
yeah,
we're always,
the purchase order of all of them, maybe purchase order and general ledger, which finally told them how much money they had, were probably the favorites of the owners, CEOs, stuff like that.
funny story. When I first started talking to home builders about purchase orders in like 1979, they thought I was crazy.
Oh,
And
wow.
they didn't know what a purchase order was. They didn't know why they would use it. And they were like, "Look, we just want the accounting." You know? So we really
Well, I
had to
know
realize that.
when I first started working with builder, down in California, a handshake was all. They'd say, yeah, I think we can do that for $30,000 and shake hands, and we'd
Did
just
they
keep
even
going.
get a written bid on a piece of paper or anything?
Yeah, usually, eventually they did, but the handshake that was it. That's all they really needed. Yeah, they would get paper afterwards, but
But then they get the invoice, and what would happen then?
9 times out of 10, they didn't see the invoice until the check was coming out. And at that point, they would gag, oh my gosh, this went 20,000 over a bid, we didn't even know about it. So purchase orders locked it in. That was like a guarantee. This is what we were going to do. Some even signed them, some didn't. Um, but yeah, that was probably the starring factor for home builders.
Yeah. That was definitely the sort of the meat and potatoes of the whole system, really, was getting that part to work, especially from standard house plans. What do you recall about um, helping people build their standard plans and standard options?
I actually didn't get into too much of that. And again, I'm trying to think, was it someone else kind of worked with the building part of that? Excuse me a minute.
Like you may have been more focused on accounting, stretching into AP and POs, and there may have been someone else who was more focused on just the standard plans and that part from fast, training the customer on that.
It wasn't, and I don't remember. I remember people like Tim Wellings. I don't know if he did that.
Yeah. Um,
Excuse me, Doug something,
Doug
but
McLaren. God, I hadn't thought about that name in ages. Look at what
um, so
kind
those
of,
guys were more into that part of it.
yeah, we hired Tim Wellings and Doug, I think at the same time, and literally we hired them to do takeoffs from blueprints for our builder clients so that we would literally build their standard plans from their blueprints.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I
that's how
remember them doing that, but yeah, I was more into the accounting side.
right. Fun times.
Oh wow, yeah. I always said that was a year after I retired that every Sunday I would wake up and say, "Did I just miss a flight?" That's
I'm supposed to be in a plane for sure.
exactly. There was one July I was home 6 days. Was
And you remember that hotel life, huh?
Oh, I do. Yep.
Fun
Excuse me.
stuff.
I get dry throat after I talk too long. But I
Uh,
didn't spend time in the hotel. For instance, if I was working at the company down there in Southern California, I would go to Disneyland or I would do something.
yeah, I did a few things like that, especially on the weekend. I always like to end up in Florida on Friday and then I go out to and like I'd stay on the at a resort or something on the beach, and then like Sunday night fly to maybe somebody in Atlanta or something. So I could go from Seattle, work my way over to the East Coast, end up in Florida on the weekend, and then work my way back the next week.
Yep. Yep.
Nice.
Builder celebrated my birthday for me, and yeah, I just it was pretty interesting. I loved the travel, to be honest with you. But the last 2 years I'd had it, I was done. And
Oh,
but for 18 years I traveled with not too much problem.
nice. Well, great. Well, Ellie, it's been great talking to you about all this.
Oh yeah, I was afraid I wasn't going to have anything to say.
There's many years to think about of all this.
Well, and since after when I retired, I immediately became a master gardener. So gardening filled my time and hardly thought about it again.
So growing clients or growing plants.
Yep,
They don't
exactly.
talk back and they don't give you too much grief.
Nope, nope.
Nice. All right, Ellie. Well, thanks for coming on the podcast, and you have a great day.
Well, you too. Nice talking to you.
All right, we'll see you.
Bye bye.
Bye.